Hey guys, so today I am going to talk about why I had to get my finger amputated in the first place, because I've had a couple questions as to why I had it amputated, and I realized that I didn't really explain that in the beginning, just that I had to get it taken off. So basically the whole issue started when I was probably around 7 or 8 years old, and I'm 20, almost 21 now. And I remember that my right index finger would get really swollen, and it was just the index, like the tip of the finger, so this part was significantly bigger than the index finger on my left hand. And so I noticed that, and we went to several doctors and they took x-rays, and nobody really knew what the issue was, and at that point it didn't really affect my daily life. It was just something that we thought was really weird, and wanted to get checked out, of course. So the years went by and they still weren't able to find anything wrong with it, and it wasn't affecting me. So we just decided to kind of move on and thought that, you know, that was just the way that my hand looked. So when I got to around the age of 11 or 12, it really began to hurt. Anytime that I would press on my index finger, I would just be in a severe amount of pain. On a scale of 1 to 10, at times it would get up to an 8. It was really bad. And then also one of the weird things is when you would press it, this weird liquid would come out, like almost like sweat. It was the craziest thing. So that, I was like, that's definitely not right. We need to get that checked out. And it made things really hard to do, like typing, writing. It just really hurt to do anything that pressed on it at all. So it really started to affect my everyday life, my ability to do things. So we went to another doctor and they suggested that I get a biopsy done, and they did one, and they quickly found out that I had a condition called lymphangiomas. And there's 2 different types of lymphangioma. One of them is on the surface of the skin, and the other is below the surface of the skin, and that's what I have, because it wasn't on top of the skin, but it was down closer to the bone, and underneath the first couple layers. So we were able to finally figure out, you know, what was going on. So I went to a hand doctor, and I talked to him, and I found out that what I had, and where I had it, was really rare, and he'd never seen any patients with lymphangioma, especially in their fingertip. So he quickly came up with an idea of how to remove the tumor, and that was to go in, take out everything that he could that was the tumor, and then to refill it with cow collagen. So I was just a little bit part cow for a while, which was pretty cool. And it was a new technique that they were trying on burn victims to do that instead of using grafts from other parts of the body to create the new skin. So I decided to do that, and when he went in for the initial surgery, they sent the surrounding area, you know, a little bit of the tissue to the lab, and the lab came back saying that there was no more lymphangioma left in my tissue. And so we had believed at the time that it was gone for good, and I'll insert a super embarrassing picture of myself after my first surgery right here. So time passed and I had no issues at all with that finger. It just looked a little bit different than my left index finger, but it functioned properly. I didn't have any pain with it. And after physical therapy, it was basically like I had never had the tumor in the first place. It was great. And that surgery was done in 2010, and it's 2018 now, so it was basically issue-free for about 8 years. And then in mid to early October, I woke up one morning And the first thing that I noticed was that my index finger really hurt. And it wasn't just, oh, I slept on something funny, like really need to pop my knuckle or something like that. I immediately knew. I was like, it's back. It was just one of those gut feelings where you just know that, it's not some weird pain. I just know that it's back, even though I had, at that point, had no idea that it could reoccur. So I made an appointment to visit with my doctor that did the surgery the first time. And while I was waiting to go to the doctor, the swelling began to show up again, and it was just so painful. I couldn't even type on my computer for school. So I just knew that somehow it was back, and I'll insert some pictures here of what my finger looked like when it got really swollen and when I knew that the tumor was most likely back. So I met with my doctor, and one of the first things he said was, oh no, it's back. And that was before we'd done testing. So at that point I knew that, it was possible for the tumor to come back. And I was just like, oh, shoot. So he had me go in for an MRI, and I looked at the results online the day before I was to go to the hand doctor. And on there, it, stated that it had come back. And that was just a horrible feeling. I remember reading it while I was in the middle of class and just trying not to cry, because it was just so frustrating that it had come back, because I didn't think that it could. And it was one of those things that I knew it was going to be painful and it was going to be awful if it came back for good. And so just I had this feeling of dread. And I remember calling my parents and saying, if he tries to do another surgery, I'm just going to tell him no. I'm just going to tell him to cut my finger off because I don't want to deal with it anymore. And part of me was like, oh, he'll probably think of some way to figure it out. Like, I don't think I'll actually cut my finger off, but I was just really didn't want to have that tumor come back. So the next morning I met with my doctor and he gave me 3 options. Well, 4, I think. No, 3. And he said 1, I could let it grow and it would just get worse and more painful to where I wouldn't be able to do anything with that finger at all based on the amount of pain that I was already having when it was just first reoccurring. And then 2, I could redo the initial surgery that I had, but since it had come back once, the likelihood that it would come back again was a lot higher. So that I didn't want to, do, knowing that I would have to then redo the surgery every so often. And then the 3rd was to do this new, kind of trial where they would insert some sort of chemo drugs into the fingertip and try to kill the bad cells, which just, by the way, lymphangioma is not cancerous, but it acts like a cancer, so it spreads. So they were trying to stop it where it was and to kill all the cells that contained lymphangioma. But I was not okay with that because it had never been done in the US before, and it was just pretty risky. And then the 4th, so I guess there were 4 options, was to amputate. And I immediately knew that that was what I was going to have to do because the other options for me personally didn't sound like good options. And then when it came to amputating, I could choose to do a partial or the full rate amputation, which is not a surprise, that's what I went with. So that was a pretty heavy decision to make. I had to do a lot of research and talk to a lot of people to try to figure out what to do, but I decided to go with the full because I really didn't want the tumor to come back and to spread, because even leaving one cell behind could cause the tumor to come back again. And I didn't want it to spread to my hand and make things even worse. So it's a long story, but that ultimately is why I had to amputate my right index finger. It has been almost 3 weeks. Do I regret it? No. Has it been difficult adjusting? Yeah, somewhat. I mean, in some ways, yes, in other ways, no. It seems about the same. But it's definitely gonna be a long journey and one that I signed up for. So, you know, it is what it is. But I figured I would just let you guys know why this all started in the first place. So thanks for watching.